We have seen the New York Rangers make a lot of changes with this roster since the beginning of last regular season, and now heading into this upcoming training camp and preseason, I think there are definitely going to be lots of competition for a select few kind of wing spots that are actually available on the forward side of things, because I think if you take a look at kind of that top six there, the wingers in the top six very well could end up being Panarin, Cooley, and Lafreniere. I think that's pretty much a 100% lock. All three of those wingers, Lafreniere, Panarin, and Cooley, I think they're all going to be in that top six. Pretty much for like 100% fact there, unless injuries do happen. And then you have that kind of one spot open there, which I think will probably get taken up by Mika Zibanejad, as he is more than likely, I would imagine, going to stick on the wing there, which he was a much better winger this past season than what he was doing, of course, when he was at center. So I think the top six wingers very well could end up being Panarin, Cooley, Lafreniere, and Zibanejad. Now, maybe they slide down one of those guys, like maybe a Lafreniere or a Zibanejad, possibly, I guess, to the third line, maybe. But I think that's at best there. Maybe another spot kind of opens. But either way, it's still the same number of kind of spots that are actually open there. So let's say hypothetically the top six kind of wing spots are locked up there with Panarin, Lafreniere, Cooley, and Zibanejad. Well, now there's only a few spots open in that bottom six for guys like Brennan Othmann, Gabe Perreault, and Brett Berard. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about in today's video, because I think these are three players who are obviously potentially going to be very key players for this Rangers team going into the long-term kind of future, and also short-term as well, right? These are three players who all could have a pretty big impact potentially on this team. They're all still very young. They've got lots of potential there. I think obviously Perreault has the highest ceiling, but I think right now there is definitely kind of a question on where are these three players going to begin this upcoming pro season there, in the AHL or the NHL, because I'm going to be honest, and I've kind of talked about this in past videos on kind of what I think, especially yesterday's video as well. I talked about what my kind of bottom six kind of forward projections are kind of looking like for the lineup there. And, personally, I think there is a very realistic possibility where we only see one of Perreault, Othmann, or Berard actually in the opening night starting lineup for the New York Rangers, because I think, obviously, like I said, Panarin, Cooley, Lafreniere, Zibanejad, those are four wingers more than likely. I think obviously three of them are locked in there. Zibanejad more than likely will be a winger there. So there's four wingers right there who very well could occupy all of the top six wing spots. And then you have for the fourth line there, I'm kind of guessing we're going to see once again Edstrom, Carrick, and Rempe there as that kind of fourth line there, with Edstrom and Rempe being the wingers. So that might take up kind of those spots there. Maybe we see a guy like Johnny Brodzinski possibly kind of jump in there as well. And I don't think the fourth line is a spot where I want to see a Perreault, Othmann, or Berard in, because I think they have some more kind of upside than that. So personally, I really only see that third line being kind of opening right now. So there's two kind of wing spots available for quite a few guys that are going to be competing for those spots. So you might have, some kind of combination of two of these kind of players here, like Taylor Radish. You've got maybe Brodzinski there. You've got Perreault, Berard, Othmann. Like, there are going to be quite a few guys kind of competing for these spots. And, my guess is we're going to see probably Yusuf Parshin as that third line center. So, there aren't a ton of spots available, really and truly. So we could end up seeing, like I said, Brodzinski, Berard, Othmann, Radish, and Perreault, all five of those guys competing for just those two spots there, kind of on that third line, kind of wing spots there potentially. And that's why I do really see Othmann, Berard, and Perreault, kind of two of those guys possibly starting in the AHL, because all three of them, these prospects, can be sent down to the AHL without having to go through waivers, whereas guys like, I believe, Parston, of course, and, Brodzinski, for example, you can't send any of those guys down without having to go through waivers, which, they very well might end up getting picked up. So I think that's kind of the tough kind of decision there. Obviously, same thing with Radish there. You definitely have to go through waivers. So that's where I think, maybe it does make some sense there to put down a guy like Othmann or Berard, maybe, or both of them, into the AHL to start, have a guy like Perreault in the third line, which that's also what I want to talk about as well, because I think if the only spot that actually kind of truly is available for one of these prospects to be on there, assuming, the top 6 wingers are Panarin, Cooley, Lafreniere as a Bandage-at, and then the 4th line is going to be Edstrom and Rempe. And I would imagine a guy like Taylor Radish, after him getting, what was it, about like $1.5 million per season there, that's a decent kind of chunk. So I would imagine they're not just going to, give him a 2-year deal at about 1.5 mil just to kind of healthy scratch him to begin the season. So I'm kind of guessing they're kind of going to put him on that 3rd line there. So really and truly, there might only be actually kind of more so one spot open there on that 3rd line, which I would rather go with a guy like Brennan Othmann or Brett Berard in that spot on the 3rd line instead of a guy like Gabe Perreault. And I say that because I think if you obviously have watched these kind of players play, Gabe Perreault is obviously pretty different from guys like Othmann and Berard. Othmann and Berard have a better kind of all-around game. They're tougher, grittier kind of guys, play with a lot of energy out there. Both of them are quite physical. Even though Berard is, fairly undersized a bit there, he still lays the body a ton there. Had a good amount of hits last season as well in the NHL. So both these players are, quite physical, Othmann and Berard there. They bring some kind of toughness. Obviously, some solid kind of talent offensively as well, but they're also kind of good, solid, reliable kind of guys defensively as well. Not amazing kind of shutdown wingers, but I would say are definitely kind of guys who can hold their own, whereas a guy like Gabe Perreault, as of right now, I don't think is, nearly as good defensively or good as all around as guys like Berard and Othmann are. But offensively, obviously, I definitely am giving the edge to a guy like Gabe Perreault. But the rest of their games there, I definitely kind of give the edge there to guys like Berard and Othmann. So that's where I kind of wonder whether or not sending down a guy like Gabe Perreault to the AHL, where instead of putting him on that 3rd line there alongside Juuso Parssinen and like a Taylor Radish type, where you're putting him alongside 2 kind of real bottom 6 kind of forwards there, in my opinion, with Juuso and Taylor, whereas if you send him down to the AHL, where he'd be able to not only get, top line minutes there and play alongside the best kind of Hartford Wolfpack players, which could include guys like Noah Laba, a, top New York Rangers prospect, and also you're going to get that top power play unit time as well. I'd imagine he definitely could also be one of the top kind of distributors on that power play unit as well, because he is such a dynamic kind of offensive threat, but also not only is he getting that kind of top, minutes there out there for the Wolfpack possibly, but he's also going to be able to probably get a little more kind of leeway and have the opportunity to kind of try more things out there and, really kind of use his skill to his advantage there and really kind of try things out at the pro level, because in the NHL there, at the end of last season, I think we saw him, if you watch those games there, be a little kind of hesitant at moments maybe, and he tried some things out for sure, but I think if he just got down there to the AHL and really had some kind of time to try and hone his skills there at the pro level against, pro competition and, just kind of work things out there physically a little more, get a little stronger as well, I think that really could make a lot of sense for someone like a Gabe Perreault. And that's why I also kind of think, not putting him alongside necessarily guys like Taylor Radish and Juuso Parssinen, no offense to them, but they're obviously not some, great offensive guys. So I really don't think you're going to be able to get the most out of a guy like Gabe Perreault, or you're not necessarily even putting him in the best spot to really kind of develop, in my opinion, on that kind of 3rd line there if he is alongside Juuso and Taylor Radish, for example. So that's why I think putting in a guy like Brett Berard or Brennan Othmann, who are maybe a little more kind of NHL ready and probably have a much better kind of all-around game and kind of fit that 3rd line role a little better. That's why I kind of think putting one of those 2 guys, Othmann and Berard, in there in that spot over Gabe Perreault and sending Gabe Perreault down to the AHL makes sense. But if they did want to go with like a Zibanejad or Lafreniere for whatever reason on the 3rd line, and there is a kind of top 6 wing spot open, then I would probably go with a guy possibly like Gabe Perreault over those 2 guys. But at the end of the day, my guess is that we're only going to see one of these 3 prospects out of Gabe Perreault, Brennan Othmann, and Brett Berard at the NHL level to begin this upcoming season. Now, it doesn't mean we, might not see 2 of them at some point next season there, but to begin, for opening night, my guess is we're probably only going to see one of those 3 prospects in the actual opening night lineup against the Pittsburgh Penguins. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. And also, what do you think is going to happen with all 3 of these prospects? Where do you think, each of them are going to begin this upcoming season? Do you think one of them will start in the NHL? Do you think 2, all 3? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Which one of these prospects do you want to see begin the season at the NHL level? Which ones do you want to see at the AHL level? I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.